Today in this video, we're going to talk about how to read academically. Now, when we talk about reading in a classroom environment, we're talking about doing something beyond just scanning the words on the page for kind of surface comprehension. It's not the same thing that you do when you review a menu at a restaurant, for example. Reading in an academic sense is a very active thing. It's not a passive activity. It's fun. It's engaging, but it should also be a challenging puzzle. And it's definitely a skill that anyone can learn to get better at with practice. So even if you're a person who has always hated reading, even if you've always thought that you were bad at reading, even if someone has told you that you were bad at reading, and shame on them if they have, but even if these things are true, you can learn how to be a good academic reader. So truly reading a text to the level of comprehension required for mastery, and that's what we're going for, means that you need to do more. You need to do more than just scan a piece and be able to summarize the plot. And that's what a lot of students do. They just scan it and they can say, well, this is what happened. Well, that's reading for summary. And that's not what we want to do. We want to go further. So a lot of times when a student thinks that they don't get it, that they're just not good at English or they're not good at reading, the problem isn't with the student's intelligence or their abilities. The problem is that they just stop too soon. They don't read deeply enough. So remember what we're working on. We're working on being able to understand a set of data enough to be able to recognize hidden patterns and see connections that might not be immediately obvious. That's what reading academically is, okay? It's always important to have that in the back of your head if you have struggled with reading academically. What are you trying to accomplish? It's a skill you have to learn how to do. So the first step in being able to do this is learning what to look for, right? So if we're learning how to recognize hidden patterns and see connections, we need to learn how to see those hidden patterns. So one way you can do this is by using an acronym to help you, and that acronym is MIST, M-I-S-T. And these letters stand for mood, imagery, structure, and tension. And they're a great guide to use as you are reading. Keep them in mind as you read, and they will help you be able to start finding these patterns. So we're going to spend some time discussing why each of these elements are important and what to do with them in more detail. But for now, a great way to get started practicing this kind of academic kind of reading is just to practice taking note of these things when you see them. It's a good place to start because you're getting in the habit of reading more deeply. You don't have to get overwhelmed at first trying to interpret all of these things. The first step is just to learn to see them. Eventually, you'll find yourself building these ideas onto each other as just habit. But before you can do that, you have to learn to see them. So let's start with the M, mood. Mood means how you as a reader feel as you read the text. So how does the text make you feel and why? These are emotion words. Does this change throughout as you read? Where? What causes those changes? This is a lot more active than many of you are used to doing as you read. But you'll notice you do this all the time as you're, for example, watching a movie. And a movie is just another kind of text, okay? So anything you can do as you're watching a movie, you can do as you're reading. You just have to transfer that, all right? So try to be specific. Make a note of where and when your mood changes. If you are used to being able to watch a movie and when some sudden thing happens and your mood changes from happy to shocked or to sad, and you can say, well, I became sad when this character suddenly died. You can do the same thing when you're reading a text. So make a note of where your mood changes as well as what causes them. Both what causes it from the text and if you have some sort of connection in your own life that makes your mood change. That's also important. And you can mark that both in the text or in some sort of external annotation notebook. And I want to show you what this might look like. So here's an example of just a short text, The Haunting of Hill House. You can see I use flags here, but I also write directly in my text. If you're not used to having your own text to write in, if you're used to textbooks from a school that you have to return at the end of the school, this is going to be a hard habit to get into. So it's okay to have an external notebook, just a little spiral bound notebook that you keep notes in. And that's what these flags are very helpful for, to help you know where the notes in your annotation notebook connect to. I have highlighting. I write directly in the text. Sometimes when things are very important, I'll just put a star. But I might say something like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Or, oh my gosh, this is so sad. This makes me think of when my best friend moved away when I was 7. That kind of connection. Get in the habit of taking notes as you go. It forces you to be more active. It forces you to pay attention. And it's also going to be an invaluable resource when you go back later and you want to, for example, write an essay. So let's move on to the next letter in MIST, which is I. It stands for imagery. These are pictures that are created by the text that relate to the 5 senses, which hopefully you remember the 5 senses, which are touch, taste, smell, sound, and sight. They can be literal, they can be figurative language, but again, the idea here is we're looking for kind of mental pictures. These details in a text are always included for more reason than just to help you imagine what's going on. An author always has a reason for including anything. Merida in Brave, her hair is curly and red for a reason. It's to indicate kind of wildness, not just her background ethnically, but the fact that she can't be contained. So when you have that image early on in the movie, when her mother's trying to make her a princess and she stuffs her hair in and then her hair just flies out, can't be contained, that is a symbolic image. The David Bowie movie Labyrinth from the 80s, there's a very famous scene where Sarah is kind of trapped in a fantasy of a ball, but she's in this very elegant ball gown and it makes her much, much older looking than normal. That ties to her desire to be an adult, to be treated like an adult and not like a child. And when she breaks out of that fantasy, it shows her actually growing up because she is not living in a fantasy world. She's learning to accept who she is. So all of these images are important. And again, if you can do it in a movie, you can do it in any kind of writing. It's the same basic skill. So they're always included for more reason than just to tell you what's happening in the text. And the more specific the detail, the more deliberate it was when the author put it in. So pay special attention to images that show up over and over and over. And when you begin to feel more comfortable taking note of these things, you can start linking imagery to mood. So how do the images make you feel? Especially in passages where your mood changes. If you find that you go from feeling happy to feeling sad, are there particular images in that passage that made you feel that way? Is there color imagery? Does the color change there? Do you see a certain bird show up or something like that? Those are things, again, that will help you piece together what the author is doing. You want to start paying attention to them. And the more you practice just seeing them, the easier it will be for you to piece together the puzzle of what's going on. So the S in MIST, again, stands for structure. And what we're talking about here is format. What format is the author using in the text? The specific details here are going to change based on the actual form. So drama is going to have some particular details. Poetry is going to have its own specific details. The genre of, a short story is going to change. And you'll learn that, again, the more you do it. You can also look for details like foreshadowing, flashbacks, just start paying attention to those kind of things. Are there thoughts that get interrupted halfway through? Does that happen a lot? Pay attention to dialect. Does the author make stylistic choices with grammar or punctuation? E.E. Cummings, for example, is famous for not capitalizing things. These often give clues about the story's theme, just like setting will or any other literary element will. And we're going to be discussing this. We're going to be talking about how to interpret this later. But for now, again, we just want to practice getting into the habit of noticing them, of looking for them and finding them where we see them. I do want to point out some people with the MIST acronym will say that S stands for shift, and they're specifically looking for places where the structure changes. And changes, the shift is important. It's an important part of structure. But personally, I think that limiting yourself to shift will be kind of an unnecessary stricture upon you. And it's hard to find the shifts if you're not used to looking for the structure to begin with. So I think you should start just by looking for structure. And finally, the T in MIST stands for tension. And this is pretty easy to locate most of the time, but readers don't always give it the credit that it deserves. Where are the problems in the text? Where's the conflict? Obviously, any good story is going to be packed full of conflict, but you have to start being in the habit of finding it, locating it, being able to point it out. So what is it that sticks with you after you finish reading? What's the part that kind of stays in your thoughts? Is there something that offended you or that bothered you or that haunts you later? This is where the author's often trying to make a point, to teach us something. This is often where the theme is, the moral lesson of the story. So pay attention to your conflict. It's not just something that drives the narrative forward, which that is obviously something that conflict is doing, but that's not the only thing conflict is doing. And some of the more important conflicts can be hidden because they're not necessarily direct, fights between characters or things. So start to look for these moments of tension, not just direct fights between characters. And I want you to notice at the end here of our conversation, there's an old adage you may have heard that you can't cross the same stream or read the same book twice. Just like you as a reader will have a different set of experiences between readings, you'll have a different knowledge base between every time that you read it. You'll be able to see things differently throughout multiple read-throughs of a text. And sometimes that'll be just because you know how it ends. But sometimes that'll be because you have different life experiences. You'll be having just a different attitude on different days that allow you to look at things differently. So the more times you read through something, the more interesting nuances and connections you'll be able to pick out. So it's really important when you sit to read something academically that you don't just do a really quick scan and call it done. The more times you read it, the better of a job you'll do. And now you have an acronym, MIST, to help kind of guide and direct you as you read to know what to look for as you learn what reading academically really means.